Hi, I'm Cassie Wilson, and you're watching Transit Talks After Dark. And today I'm here with
Councilor Angelita Morillo, representing District 3.
Councilor. When did you last ride transit before today?
Yesterday.
Amazing.
Every day.
Yes, yeah, you're one of the 30% of Oregonians who can't or don't drive. I was curious, were there circumstances that led to that being the case for you?
Yeah, my mom didn't know how to drive, and she only knew how to ride a motorcycle, so we never had a car, and she never learned how to drive. And then we moved to Portland, and it was such a bus-friendly city that it was really easy for me to never have to get my permit, and so I am bus and transit dependent, and I love it.
A majority, if not every elected official I can think of besides you, drive primarily to get around, and as a result, a lot of transportation policies and investments have historically focused on driving, on cars. What has your experience been as a non-driver now that you're in a position of power?
I mean, I think for me, we don't have control over TriMet at the city directly,
Right.
but I always push for other legislators, especially at the state legislative level, to actually invest in transit. I think that we end up funding a lot of highway expansions and infrastructure for cars and never bus infrastructure. And the reality is that a lot of our constituents are struggling. They are struggling to pay rent, they're struggling to pay for food, and cars can be very expensive. So we need to make sure that transit is accessible to everybody. And to me, that means making sure we have an efficient transportation system.
So this is our first Transit Talks After Dark episode because we're heading into winter.
Because it's 5 p.m.
It's 6 p.m. I mean, it's dark early now. We're also, in addition to heading into winter, heading into a season of major service cuts for TriMet, which means that, people are going to be waiting in the dark, cold, rain longer.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from constituents, and what role do you think the city can play in supporting transit?
I don't think that most constituents have realized this is coming yet. I think that people are going to realize it when they go to take their regular bus and suddenly it's coming every hour or so. I did tell my staff basically to never expect me to be on time to anything ever again, because if the bus comes that infrequently, there's just no way. I literally can't make it on time unless I'm taking a lift to everything. So I think that we're going to get a lot of people being very concerned when it's too late, and that's a little concerning. But I think that our job is really to make sure that folks at the state legislature understand what our priorities are, and that we really need them to invest in transit funding.
So we were asked to turn off our lights, so now it is truly transit after dark.
I mean, I think I was pretty disappointed in how the transportation package at the state legislature went. We really needed those dollars to come in from federal funding. Like I said, we don't have funding for TriMet at the city. It's not our jurisdiction, and so we rely on the state legislature to really make their big pushes there. And unfortunately, I think that there were a lot of Republicans who were pushing to cut transit, and to me, that's absurd because their constituents rely on transit as well, just like everybody else. It's a nonpartisan issue as far as I'm concerned. But I think in all of the conversations I have when I meet with state legislators, I tell them how important transit is, my experience riding transit, and just really pushing the perspective of my constituents who don't have access to cars. I also just think with tariffs and everything happening at the federal level, maintaining a car is going to be more expensive than it ever has been before. And the idea that people can keep living the same way that they always have is just unrealistic to me. Oh, dang, they have the white light.
Hello, no thank you. Something I've heard from many elected officials who don't tend to ride transit is that transit is unsafe and therefore not something that should be invested in. What has your experience as a regular transit rider been with safety?
Yeah, I ride the bus pretty much every single day of my life, and I have not had any life-threatening situations. It's just about as safe as anywhere else in the city. I think obviously when you're a 5'2" woman, young woman, you deal with a lot of harassment things from random men on the street, but that also just happens anywhere that you go. So I don't think that the bus is inherently unsafe in a way that anywhere else is, and oftentimes I experience less of that on the bus than I do elsewhere. I think that just comes from a perspective of believing that poor or working class people that take the bus are inherently more criminal or violent than other people, and that's just simply not true. It's just regular people who are trying to get to work, trying to run their errands. This is making my voice so shaky. What road
Apparently
is this?
we need to pave division.
Yeah, someone needs to pave this road. Who's on that?
Yeah, somebody should really do
Okay,
something
we should
about
note
that.
this for PBOT staff when I get back to work tomorrow.
Do you think transportation policy would look different if more elected officials rode transit more regularly?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's, like with most things, there's a lot of fear-based policy making that's based on myths about things rather than an understanding of how things actually work. And I think if we had more legislators and city councilors and other people riding the bus regularly, they would understand what was actually needed. And we know that efficiency, frequency, all of those things are what people are actually asking for.
Are there challenges in using transit as a city councilor to get where you need to go on time?
Yeah, I think that obviously there are difficulties when you're having back-to-back meetings trying to get from place to place, especially if you have to have a transfer or if you're trying to go from southeast to northeast, almost impossible for that to take less than an hour and a half. I also think there are some public safety differences when you're a public figure. I would say after some of my national interviews regarding ICE and the federal government, I got a lot of death threats and folks were pointing out what bus stops I take. So I had to shift sort of my safety mindset. But that's more from being a public figure than it has anything to do with being on the bus.
In addition to having to wait longer in the dark and cold for the bus, something else that folks experience this time of year is just less safe streets, just that come with less hours of daylight. What is the city doing to look at these issues to make streets safer?
Yeah, I would say during the last budget cycle, my office specifically, we tried to look for funding to make safety improvements to Cesar A. Chavez Boulevard. We did not end up passing that amendment. We didn't have enough votes, but because of the continuous issues that we face on that city and the multiple lives that keep being taken from us there, our office is going to continue to push to get additional funding during the next budget cycle. We've also been working with the Portland Bureau of Transportation staff to identify different ways to make changes to that road in particular. So one thing that we talked about is slowing it down from 35 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour. But there are other alternatives. I think that the main things that I'm interested in is how do we physically create barriers that prevent people from speeding through, because we know that just signage or paint changes are not sufficient. We need to actually create physical barriers to preventing cars from speeding through in that area. And I think that from what I've observed, PBOT staff are very dedicated to making those changes. So they've been giving us a list of options based on the funding that we have of things that we can do. And we're going to keep working with them to identify those solutions.
As a pedestrian on Cesar A. Chavez, it's like having cars rushing right next to the sidewalk is such an uncomfortable experience.
I've had that same experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
fun.
sidewalk is very low and very narrow. It's so easy for a car to just get on there on accident even, and it should never be like that.
What is your transportation hot take?
I think that we need to stop funding highways and expanding massive car infrastructure that way. We need to start focusing on transitioning into public infrastructure like buses, biking, alternative modes of transportation. We just can't keep living the way that we have this whole time and pretend that things are going to get better.
Who should we have on Transit Talks next?
You know who you should have? You should have Councilor Eric Zimmerman, because he is terrified of the bus. And I think it would be really good for him to experience the wonder that is riding the FX line.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think Eric Zimmerman should ride the bus.
Would you recommend the show to him?
I would recommend this show to him, and I'll see what I can do.
Thank you for coming on Transit Talks.
Thank you for having me. It was great to see you.